Hey guys, welcome back. So I feel like I say this at the end of every month, but I cannot believe another month is over. 2020 has felt like both the longest year ever and the shortest year ever, and I have no idea how that's even possible, but yet here we are. It's already October, right? So that said, I am back with another wrap up. Now this month was a good reading month for me, I would say. I tried really hard to not necessarily stick to my TBR, that would be too much for me, but at the very least try not to totally abandon it. And you will be happy to know that I actually read a book from my TBR. Now when I talk about TBRs, I'm actually referring to the fall TBR, which I had a video about a few videos back, in which I listed out books relating to fall that I wanted to read this season. I wasn't giving myself a month, but more so the entire autumn season to complete it. That way I kind of take some of the pressure off myself, and it's a good thing that I did. So as for this month, as I mentioned, I read 9 books. One of them was a cozy, one of them, well actually 3 of them, which were part of a series, were part of my TBR. I read a paranormal, I read a slew of the in-depth series that you guys know I love so much, and then I finished it off with my first Nordic Noir. So I'm actually trying to do something different yet again for my wrap-ups. I will be honest, you guys, I'm still trying to figure out the best way to do wrap-ups, and maybe by me kind of trying something different every month, that's my way of doing wrap-ups. I don't know. Anyway, let me know in the comments below if you do watch wrap-ups, your favorite way, I guess, to have the books explained to you. But I am actually going to spend a lot of the time concentrating on this Nordic Noir because I just finished it. It's at the top of my mind and I really want to talk about it, and I feel like this is a perfect space to do it. So before we get into that, let's talk about the other books that I read first. Okay, so as I mentioned, I did read a cozy this month, and it was The Good, The Bad, and the Emus, which is the 17th book in the Meg Langslow series. Y'all know that I already love that cozy mystery series, and this particular one was even more compelling because we are along the ride with Meg as she tries to figure out what happens to her grandmother. Now, the reason that this is such a big deal is because she knew nothing about her grandparents growing up. Her dad was adopted, and it wasn't until recently that they found his father, aka Meg's grandfather, and in this particular book they find out about her grandmother. In fact, the story starts off with them finding her name, going to the town in which she lives, only to discover that she had passed away under what they believe are mysterious circumstances, that it could be murder. So in order to, I guess, kind of solve the mystery of what happened to her grandmother, and then along the way figure out who she was as a person, Meg has to step in and try and figure out what happened on the night that she was killed. And I really enjoyed this one for the reason that I love the series as a whole, which is the familial aspect. Meg has a really large family. Some of them are quirky, some of them are funny, but it's all such a heartwarming thing when they all get together. And so since this one starts off talking about her grandmother, it's just all about family, which is very heartwarming. So if you like cozy mysteries that have that strong family element, definitely check this one out. Okay, now let's talk about the book, or rather series, that was actually on my TBR that I read, which I'm totally shocked, you guys. Again, I wasn't really expecting, though I was hopeful, to read any of the books on the TBR that I set out for myself, but I did, so I'm patting myself on the back. So as far as the series that I read, it is the Night Prince series, which is by Jeaniene Frost, the same paranormal romance author who wrote the Night Huntress series, which I absolutely love. And in this particular series, we are focusing on Vlad's story, who was a side character in the Night Huntress series. Vlad is basically where Dracula came from, or rather the myth of Dracula. And in this one, we find him, I guess, pairing up with the woman that he ends up being with. She comes from a circus background, like a traveling circus background, because she has these special powers that make her really quirky, in the sense to where she can't touch anything because she emits electricity, I guess is the best way to describe it. So she's grown up not really being able to have any physical contact with anybody, but as we have in our romances, there's somebody for everyone, and she is able to actually touch Vlad because he's able to absorb the energy because of his own special brand of powers. So I actually read 3 out of the 4 books in the series. I'm not going to review all 3 books in great depth because I feel like when it comes to these series, they're probably better off reviewed as a whole. But let me just say that I did enjoy the series, or at least the 3/4 of it that I read. Now, I will say I don't really think that I enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed Bones and Cat's story in the original Night Huntress series that Jeaniene Frost wrote, which is like the very first series in this world. Just because I feel like their chemistry just was a little bit more of what I wanted. But for what it was with Vlad and Layla, who was the heroine in this story, I did appreciate what they had together. As far as this particular series, it was so much more gruesome than I was expecting, but I say that in a good way. You know, when it comes to paranormal romances, there is a fine line, or rather a balance, that I particularly like with both the action and the romance and the paranormal aspect, and I feel like this series did a great job melding all 3 of those elements together to make it a really compelling series. It was a lot more gruesome and gory than the original Night Huntress series, but at the same time, the steam level was also very hot, which again, I really appreciated. And overall, I think it was just a really well done series, and I highly recommend it to anybody who likes paranormal romance. I just particularly was so hung up on Bones and Cat from the other series. I knew going into it that I would be doing a lot of comparing, which is my own fault. I know I shouldn't have done that, but for what it was, I really liked it. It was extremely action-packed. From the get-go, you are kind of thrust onto the page with a lot of action, and as the series goes on, there's just even more action, and I really like that. Now, one critique that I had, one that is actually standalone from comparing it to the Night Huntress series, is that I did find that our heroine Layla was at times annoying, in the sense to where she felt like she was trying to continuously be the martyr. You know, she wanted to sacrifice herself so that nobody else would get hurt, and that oftentimes went against what was best for not only her but for Vlad and like the group as a whole. She was so caught up with, you know, putting herself out there and doing things that she shouldn't have done and going off when people told her not to go anywhere, that it just really made me frustrated, because it's like, girl, just stay where you are. Don't do anything stupid. You're on a totally different level than everybody else, and it's just insane to think that you can take this on by yourself. So that actually drove me crazy, more so in the first book, but as the second and third book went along, she kind of had just cause to do that, so I kind of forgave that. But by then, I was just kind of miffed at that being one of her personality traits that to me was a flaw, that it kind of bothered me a little bit. But as far as the rest of the series, I really enjoyed it. Vlad is such a dark and brooding, sexy hero that I'm sure any of you readers who like alpha heroes will no doubt love him, because he's got this like aloofness and smoldering thing that is just very like, you know, Bram Stoker times 5 in a good way. I don't know. It was perfect for the fall season, and I'm glad that I read it. It got me kind of into the spooky Halloween season because it was paranormal and it had vampires involved, but I would recommend it overall. So after I read that, I was still on a paranormal kick, and so I went to Goodreads and kind of did some digging around to try and find something not necessarily similar with like vampires and everything like that, but just something with a paranormal world. And so I decided to switch it up just a little bit and went for Shifters, and that's when Claimed comes in. This is actually book 1 in the Crescent City Wolves series, and I only read Claimed, the first book, but I will say just straight up before I kind of talk about the book that I would say that it is mislabeled as a standalone. I know it's part of a series, but let's be honest, when it comes to romances, usually series means like shared world, meaning that the couple featured in one book will most likely get a happily ever after, and then the other books in the series will be focusing on other couples. That wasn't the case in this particular book, and I was a little thrown off by that by the time that I got to the end, but overall, I think it was an enjoyable ish book. Basically, it was about a woman who is Native American whose parents basically completely hate any kind of shifters. They are living in this small town in which shifters are known about, but it's kind of like an unspoken thing where it's just they don't bother us, we don't bother them. And this woman owns a tattoo shop that caters to shifters because she's able to kind of deal with their skin and knows how to tattoo them. Well, one night she is, going about her business in her shop, and this group of wolves, or these group of men who are shifters, come in, wreak havoc, and basically kill nearly everybody in the shop. But there is one guy in the group who's a shifter who feels kind of compelled to our main character in some way, and so he wants to protect her at all costs, and he ends up staking his claim on her just to basically protect her from the rest of his pack. So fast forward, the two of them have this bond, and you realize that they're basically mates, and so they are on the run, or rather trying to find a way to prevent the rest of his pack from coming to finish the job and killing her off too. Now, that premise in itself sounds very interesting to me, and it was in a certain sense, but at the same time it felt rushed to me. As I mentioned, the ending ended on a semi-happily for now, but I was left wanting a little bit more. Though begrudgingly, I didn't really want to commit to another series, if I'm being honest, so I probably won't finish the series, but it was really compelling. The thing that makes this stand out is that our hero is part of this pack in which they're kind of like rebels, and they go around killing people, doing whatever they want, but he is bloodbound to them by like a promise, and he doesn't really want to be involved with them, and so he's struggling with keeping his promise, but also trying to keep his humanity, because he doesn't want to go around slaughtering humans and everything like that. So I liked it. But it wasn't necessarily memorable for me. I think I might have given it 3 stars, but maybe that would change if you were to continue the rest of the series. So if this sounds like something that is interesting to you, just be wary going into it. Okay, so you guys know every month I have some kind of in-depth book in my lineup, and this month I actually read 3 of them. I was on such a roll, and I really wanted that crime fiction element, and so I binge listened to 3 of the in-depth books. The name of them are, I'm looking at my phone over here, Betrayal in Death, Seduction in Death, and Judgment in Death. Now, I'm not going to review those individually, but I will say as a whole, I am loving this series so much, and I really like how Robb has made every story seem almost episodic, in the sense of having like a singular case for Eve to focus on, and the relationship with the characters really blossoms as the story goes on, and I really appreciate that there's just growth overall, growth with the relationships, growth with the characters, not even with just Eve, who's our main heroine, but also the side characters like Peabody and Rourke and Mavis. Again, these are all like her friends, her co-workers, and her husband respectively, but I just really enjoy the series, and so I'm not going to gush about it too much because I've already done that, but if you're new to my channel, just know that I love JD Robb's In-Depth series. I'm taking part of the In-Depth Readathon, in which you try and read as many of the books as you can throughout the year. I am up to book 14, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you put it into perspective, there are 50 books, so I've got quite a few books to make up and catch up to. So I really enjoyed all of them. That's all you guys really need to know, and I would highly recommend checking the series out if you enjoy crime fiction with a romantic element. Okay, so if you guys are still sticking around, let's talk about this book, The Chestnut Man. This is the last book that I read in the month, and I just finished it. I've got some thoughts because I'm fresh off of this gruesome, action-packed Nordic Noir. This is actually the first Nordic Noir book that I've ever read, and if you don't know what a Nordic Noir book is, it's just like a kind of like a name for a subgenre in which it's Nordic fiction or crime thrillers that are set in like a Norwegian country. They're more often than not usually darker elements than your typical investigative or procedural type book, and I can say without a doubt that is so true, because this book does not shy away from any of the dark, gruesome bits. And I really love that. What does that say about me? I don't know. But anyway, this book is basically about a killer who is going around, obviously killing people, but at the scene of the crime, he is leaving these little chestnut dolls around or on each of his victims. And more so than that, the police soon find out that each of these dolls have the fingerprint of the daughter of one of the government officials who basically went missing the previous year. The daughter, that is. So, the reason that this is interesting is because at the time when the government official's daughter disappeared, they presumed her dead because they found a guy who admitted to the crimes. They locked him away. They thought it was, over with. But here we are a year later, somebody who is going around committing these crimes, leaving fingerprints of this girl that they thought was dead. So that adds another element into it. So I enjoyed this book so much. I think that if you enjoy kind of dark procedurals, you would really like this book because it's very fast paced. Each of the chapters are like 1 to 3 pages. So you're always getting that, fast pacing, which really makes it compelling, really makes it page turning. And as far as the gruesomeness, you are getting in-depth descriptions of each of the crime scenes, which makes it really easy to imagine when you are reading, what's going on, what you see, what you smell. And the killer is, again, I keep saying the word gruesome, but he is just very sadistic, and the author does not shy away from any of the descriptions, which I really appreciate. And as far as the police detective, so you'll notice here that, maybe you don't notice, but, and I didn't realize this until after I bought the book and was already halfway done, but it's got a little Netflix, coming soon to Netflix, sticker on it, and it completely makes sense. This would be an ideal book to turn into a Netflix series. It's actually by the same author who wrote The Killing, which I think is already on Netflix if you guys are familiar with it. But yeah, it's exactly like a Netflix miniseries special because you've got 2 police detectives who are trying to come up with, possible suspects for these crimes, and one of them is a woman police detective who is trying to basically move on to another higher up division. And then you've got another guy who is brought in from Europol because he's basically on timeout. He messed up at his last job, and while he is waiting on them to figure out the fate of his career, he's sent to this small town, maybe not so small, but he's sent to this town to be kind of like this woman's assistant or partner and figure out this crime before he heads back. And so you've got these 2 people who are reluctant to work together and oftentimes don't work together very well. But in the end, it all works out. And I just enjoyed it so much. I am not a person that easily shies away from the gory details or gets spooked or anything like that, but let me just say, I was reading this on vacation while on the beach, which, first of all, let's talk about the fact that this is probably not like typical beach read material, but here we are. I'm sitting on the beach reading this. It's bright, it's beautiful, you hear the waves lapping, picturesque sound, and then all of a sudden I am like deep in the pits of hell with the book and the descriptions, and I got so weirded out by the eerie descriptions and what was happening in this atmospheric autumn dark rainy day, which is when the book takes place, that I had to like close the book for a minute, look around, take in my surroundings, and just like kind of shake myself out of it. That's how good the writing was in this book. So again, I highly recommend it, though I do want to point out that if you are not a fan of those really sadistic and gory details, you might not want to pick this up, but if that's something that is your cup of tea, you're absolutely going to love this. It is rather thick, I guess, but like I said, the chapters are short and you can fly through it very easily once you get into the story. It starts off with a bang, it starts off with a killing, and it all kind of circles back around. And so yeah, I can't recommend it enough. And if you're looking for a fall read, actually, this is perfect. I didn't realize until actually I picked it up and I started reading it that it takes place during the fall season. So you kind of follow along long. It starts off the year before, or maybe like 20 years before, but it's in October 30th or 31st. And then you fast forward to present day and it takes place all around like October through November or something like that. So, okay, that's me gushing about it. I really, really enjoyed this book. It's probably the best book that I read out of everything this month. But it definitely left me feeling some kind of way in like a dark place. I had some weird dreams after reading this book. I'll just keep it at that. So I'm probably going to start off the next month reading / listening to something a little bit lighter just to kind of like shake myself out of this. But yeah, definitely recommend it. I cannot recommend it enough. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the books that I read in September, and hopefully you guys maybe got some suggestions out of that, if our tastes are similar, that is. But as usual, let me know what you guys read this month, what your favorite thing was. If you have read any of the books that I mentioned, please let me know, especially if it's the Chestnut Man, because I am dying to talk about it with someone. I was giving my husband like updates about the story as I was reading, and everything that I described. While I was describing it to him, I'm thinking to myself like, man, I probably sound like a psycho right now because I am excitedly talking about how the killer just like bashed in someone's eye and cut their foot off, and oh, it's gross, it's exciting, I'm a weirdo, I get it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and until next time, I'll talk to you guys later. Happy reading. Bye!